Welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. It's your old friend Jordan here, joined by Chris Niccolls and Jaron Schneider as always. But there's an extra face here. What's going on? Well, this week we wanted to bring in our good friend Tyler Stalman. You might know him from his YouTube channel, his excellent podcast, and having strong opinions on all of the social media websites. But I really wanted to bring him on to the podcast because some people are unaware of this. Tyler is actually very important to the history of our YouTube show. Like 16 years ago, we were uploading Camera Store TV episodes onto the website like barbarians. Like you'd actually go to it and they just had the files. So Tyler went into my boss's office and he's like, why don't you just put these on YouTube and save the bandwidth? And they'd actually have a chance of people watching them. And that is actually how we went and re-uploaded the first 8 episodes of the Camera Store TV. That's how we wound up with a YouTube channel, which is now our job and has led us to this magical moment. So thank you, Tyler.
And over the years, just think of how much money I saved you in bandwidth. I mean, that's really what you're thanking me for here. So you didn't have to pay those hosting fees over the years.
Absolutely.
But it's funny, like that era, I remember there was sort of no differentiation between YouTube and Vimeo and Daily Motion. So there'd be websites where you just like upload it to one and they'd splatter it across the web. So it's just hosted everywhere. And you'd be like, I don't know, hopefully one of them sticks.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Yeah, it's crazy. Vimeo was like, we didn't know which one was going to take off, that one or YouTube. And now Vimeo is completely pivoted to a totally separate business model than they used to be. That's wild.
Yeah, Daily Motion still exists.
Really?
Oh,
for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah. It's
What's
there,
on
though.
It? Go in there.
I think it's sort of like the gray web of like, oh, the stuff that YouTube pulled down, but
just scenes from movies. That's all that's left there now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Perfect. Well, we got a lot of news to get to. I definitely want to talk some tech with Tyler because he has been playing with a lot of the new developments that we've seen recently, but also we got some news stories. So Apple wants to take its sensor design in-house potentially. Photo Mechanic, very popular software with photojournalists, is moving to a subscription model like all photo editing software. And also there's Chronos slow motion cameras, which is bringing affordable slow motion to the masses. We're going to run through the specs there and see if that's actually compelling. Let's get into it, everyone.
All right, we're back. Thanks again to our podcast sponsor, OM System. You don't have to wait until Black Friday to get huge savings on OM System cameras, lenses, and more. This includes a compact, durable, and feature-packed OM5 camera, which is just $999 right now. Now, over the weekend, we actually published an awesome film. OM System ambassador Matt Seuss, he explored Idaho's stunning Sawtooth Mountains with his OM5, super compact, taken into the backcountry. It's still rugged, fantastic sort of computational photographic technology. It's the class-leading IP53 weather sealing, the compact size that really made it fantastic for Matt while he was hiking, biking, flying in small planes. I mean, it was quite the adventure. You should definitely check it out. And that was made with our own PetaPixel travel editor, Michael Bonacore. Beautiful story that he put together. I haven't been to the Sawtooth Mountains. I mean, you've been to Idaho once, haven't you, Tyler?
Yes, but not the Sawtooth Mountains. I mean, this sounds a lot more adventurous than anything I did. I was like at a resort.
You know what's funny? We were just in Idaho. Well, the three of us were. And we did not get to the Sawtooths.
No.
But we saw basically everything
But I mean,
else.
if you wanted to add more to the itinerary of that
I mean, Idaho's pretty amazing. Like, there's so much to see in such a small state. Like, unbelievable, the topography changes. But, like, watch the movie. It's very cool. It's very exciting. I think Michael did a great job, too, of, like, capturing a lot of the downtime. Like, they always show the drone stuff and getting the photos and all that and the epic music, driving 4x4s. But he also caught a lot of the downtime of Matt just, like, contemplating what he wants to shoot next, where his mind is, trying to get the photos he's trying to get. And yeah, the Sawtooth Mountains look rugged. There's waterfalls, like huge lakes. It's pretty stunning stuff.
This is a very different video than we typically do on the channel. So I really am curious what people's thoughts are on it. If they would go give it a watch, see what they think.
It's an awesome story. You should definitely check it out. It's a beautiful adventure. Watch the film. If you love photography, regardless of what brand of camera you're into, you'll enjoy it. Go to PetaPixel, visit the website, click on the link in the video description below. As usual, it's explore.omsystem.com/petapixel. And there's all the list of incredible savings there as well for the OM System cameras. It is a really good deal right now. We talked about it last week on the podcast. You definitely don't want to miss out if you're looking at getting an OM System.
Elegant at the end there.
All right. Well, thank you for that excellently read read there, Chris. Let's move on and talk about some tech stuff. In the news, a report has come out from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who is particularly reliable when it comes to stuff about Apple. I get the sense that he's got someone in there. That's the only way to really make this many correct predictions. But he did a story this week that mentions that Apple wants to bring more of the stuff that it puts in its phones in-house. And included in that, in addition to a bunch of other little things like the modem that they're using and they want to stop working with Qualcomm, they want to bring sensor design in-house. And I wanted you guys to sort of explain what that actually means when someone like Apple, who does not fab their own sensors, bringing sensor design in-house.
First, I just want to say I can't wait for the expose on what the deal with Mark Gurman has been all these years, because I think he just works at Apple. I think Apple tells. I mean, it's crazy.
I think they tell him.
He knows everything. It's bizarre. So
it'll be like his eulogy is someone from Apple will stand up and been like, "Okay, our contract is now
Tim Cook
expired."
Is there, and he's like,
he did get all the skinny. Yes, he had the best moles.
Well, I don't actually think that, but my take on this as the most Apple obsessed person here, I guess.
It's going to be close.
This is just obviously going to happen, but I don't think it's in any rush. I mean, I don't think this is even so much a case where Mark has specific information at all about any advancements in sensors on their end. I'm sure it's more just conversations and extrapolating what's kind of obvious to all of us. But with the progress they've made on the Qualcomm modems, or attempting to replace Qualcomm's modems with their own, I don't think this will happen anytime soon. All of this stuff is very difficult, and Apple needs to be able to do better than everyone else to be able to put it in there. They've been working on these ARM chips for so long on iPhones, and they had years of runway first. They haven't done anything with sensors yet, so I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath.
A little bit of background information on that. You mentioned the Qualcomm thing being a sign that it's going to take a while. It's because they've been working on it for a while and it's been delayed further, according to these same reports. And they've also been working on another set of things that's been 10 years in the making here, and they still haven't made any progress on it. So I think it's the micro LED display technology that they were going to put in their own watches. That's apparently been something they've been working on for 10 years and it still is not ready. So yeah, you're probably right, but they at least have it's in their mind that they would like to design their own sensors.
Yeah.
I mean, the big question for me is what is going to differentiate what Apple wants from a sensor from what all other smartphone manufacturers do? Because they all want the same thing. Soak up a little more light, get the readout faster so it can capture more images when you push that, improve video performance. Nikon made they were also saying hey, Sony, here's a design of a sensor that we'd like. And they had some very odd requests for it. I think specifically about the D4S sensor was a very unique one. There was nothing really like that. D800, where they really figured out hey, we could improve the base DR. What is Apple going to request from, I'm assuming Sony, that will be different from what they're currently working to develop. That's the same stuff everybody wants.
Yeah. Maybe Apple's just going to buy Sony, and then they'll just own their entire sensor division, and then they'll say there are chips now.
Well, with all the other examples, there's a really obvious pressure point of why does Apple want this? And you can see the path of this is what they're trying to do. And in the case of the processors, that's the best example so far, right? The M chips are just absolutely amazing and have changed the game in terms of how the Mac is competing with everything else. And it was because Intel had a completely different priority to what Apple wanted to do, putting performance over power efficiency, which Apple has. I mean, that's what is amazing about the M3 and the M2 chips is it is just so incredibly performant per watt. It uses the electricity it gets really well, and that's not what Intel was doing. So Apple wanted to, go a different direction, and also be able to keep a more regular release cycle. With Qualcomm, there's a bunch of sort of political stuff between the two companies that wants them to move away. They've had issues with NVIDIA in the past, so doing their own GPUs. Like, there's all these reasons that have motivated it. I don't see that happening with the photo sensor. I mean, Sony is doing an amazing job so far. So I think we'd have to see some kind of pressure point, like maybe, Vision Pro. There's something special about 3D or spatial video that actually could utilize a different sensor technology. But I think if it's just about better dynamic range, faster autofocus, the usual, if it's just getting better sensors, I don't think they'd move away just for that, because they probably can't build a better sensor.
It's not like Sony's doing a bad job at any of that. Like, they're doing the best job, which is why everyone outside of Samsung and a few others are using Sony. So, yeah. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I wanted to see what you guys thought. Photomechanic has caved to industry trends and is switching to a subscription model. They have not said how much it will cost, but that they just simply, they specifically say that they can do more with a subscription system than with people buying perpetual software. And by that, I mean consistent income. But they haven't really said much more. This should come as no surprise, but people are not happy.
Shocker.
But I mean, it's the way it's going, right? And so Photomechanic's interesting because I admit I have never used it.
Me neither.
And yet I hear a lot of working professionals who are like, I love it. Like, I will never leave it. So have you tried it, Tyler? Have you ever used Photomechanic?
Yeah, I've tried to use it to kind of escape the slow progress of Lightroom, not really utilizing the increases in performance especially on the Mac. As the hardware got better, Lightroom's performance just has not at all. Like, you pull up the little grid that says like how much GPU and CPU is being used as you export or import, and it's like nothing. I mean, it's just not, it doesn't push the machines. So Photomechanic has done a much better job of just like being as performant as it can all the time. But I don't like using it. It feels very, like the 90s. I don't know, like the interface is ugly. And it's really a utility. I get why people are attracted to that. It just like it's an added step for me and didn't end up saving me any time. But that's all reasons I think it actually might make sense for them to move towards the subscription models. Like, they will always be a niche product. They're never going to be competing with Lightroom. They're not going to be trying to take a piece of Capture One. They will always have a little corner of the market that loves them and is probably willing to pay quite a bit to keep using their favorite software. And it is just much more sustainable. That said, I can complain about subscriptions for a long time.
Yeah.
But for their business to keep going, I get it. It's a tough spot.
In a bubble, you can basically say like, I can see how a subscription makes sense. But when everyone is a subscription, you get just really weighed down by that. So our senior news editor, Matt Grokut, he uses Photomechanic right now as a way to embed captions more easily than we have to do in our system, where you put them in manually with each picture in WordPress. So like it's been a huge deal for him to save time, but he says he's not thinking that it's going to be worth the subscription to keep doing that. Like, he's just like, I don't know, I probably won't pay a subscription. I'll just do the captions manually next time. It'll be a little bit harder, but it's not like a major thing that's worth it for him to pay a sub, regardless of price. He said he didn't even care how much they were going to charge. He just didn't like the idea.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to remember with this is who it was designed for. Like, this is not really editing software. You can do some basic like cropping, sharpening, that kind of stuff. It's for photojournalists to get images out quick, like quickly. Process even a RAW sometimes, but mostly like just JPEGs, get their metadata on it and get it out as fast as possible, which is, not something that's a priority for a huge number of photographers unless that's your chosen field. It's just everything is getting tightened with photojournalists right now. So I could totally see editors not being thrilled that they now have an additional cost when, photojournalism's already getting squeezed so hard. So they'd probably be running like Photomechanic 6 and their JPEGs through it for a long time would be my suspicion.
Yeah. We talk about like the target audience, working professionals, but really, Jordan, you're right. It's photojournalists and it's like working media. And it's tough because you reach a point where you don't want to change your workflow. I don't know. I think people are going to give in to the subscription thing because they don't want to have to learn new software.
I mean, they usually do.
I mean,
that's why people keep doing
I
it.
know.
People give in.
But we know a lot of photojournalists, they're lovely people, but change is not something they really enjoy, right? I mean, they like the gear that they're using for the last 10 years and they want to keep their workflow exactly the same. And I totally get that. So yeah, but I don't know, natural evolution of the market.
I know there's a lot of people out there that have that reaction of like, just because there is a subscription, they would like to drop it because they dislike the business model, period.
Yep.
I canceled a bunch of subscriptions recently, and just to like save money, I was like looking at the prices. I would just encourage anybody that's doing it out of principle to just try to have a little sympathy for the developers, or a little empathy, I should say. And if the price is reasonable, because that's the thing, is there's such a big difference between there's apps that I've used that are like $20 a year, $30 like there's some things that are actually incredibly reasonable. And if you 100% can't afford, like, it is not an impact. I think it's worth supporting a developer that's going to create the product that you use. You know, some things are very expensive, which is what I canceled recently. I downsized my Adobe subscription.
Very expensive.
There's a bunch of stuff that's like really expensive that I had to cut.
How about your Netflix
but I did it based
subscription?
on price. Like I canceled and then my wife turned it back on a month later. So that didn't last very long.
I keep trying to convince my wife to stop Netflix. I'm like, can we please? Because it's not me that has to be convinced, and it is a battle.
And then
I've been trying to
just
think
drop
about
a Crown season every time you guys have
I
that
was
argument.
about to say that.
We heard you.
My wife
everyone's
also
wife is
subscribes.
watching The Crown right now.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
What I've been trying to think of lately is, maybe come up with like a total per year that, okay, this is what software is worth to my business every year. I can spend $1,000 on software. I can spend $2,000 on software because I make however many total thousand. And then just like decide, like, I'm comfortable with that being a recurring expense. Once it goes over that, I'll see what I need to cut. But, some of this does lead to better product development. I don't know. I'm defending it all here, but I don't want to... I cancel a lot of stuff too. So I get it. I just want to make sure people are remembering why it's happening.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, I'm actually curious. How would you like to be able to shoot at 30,000 frames per second for $20,000?
It's all I've been asking for. This is exactly what I need.
All your clients, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can do that because apparently this is affordable. If the ability to shoot at nearly 30,000 frames per second with a new Chronos Q12, which costs only $20,000, is apparently a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the headline frame rate
cost,
is going to look horrendous. What was the actual resolution?
I believe it's like
300 by 400.
No. That's far too high. No. It's like
I thought it was like 128 by 32.
It is. Yeah, it's 128.
It was
by
like
32.
watching porn in the 90s or something.
It's like a Pixel Vision. What was the thing that they shot part of Slacker on? Like the little toy that you could record video onto cassettes. It's like that at that point. But yeah, I mean,
but you can get like 1400 frames per second in 4K.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty
That's
cool.
very nice. Yeah.
Aside from the resolution, though, I was looking at these samples in their release video, and the slow motion looks great. The motion looks great. I'm sure this camera does what it's meant to. I bet it works great for especially scientific stuff. In terms of filmmaking, I'm looking at that image, and those highlights do not hold, like in any of them. It's not just the resolution. This does not have much dynamic range, which is a common problem with any high frame rate camera. But I think that's where this, like, the budget aspect of this being cheaper, that's what you're missing out on. Like, it almost looks like there's no log profile, which I don't know if there is, but the images in the sample, I'm like, I wouldn't want to use those in anything I do.
I mean, I think the thing we need to highlight right now, which is really topical this month, is this is a global shutter. And you highlighted, Tyler, the dynamic range penalty there. I mean, this has historically been the trade-off when we're looking at these kind of cameras. And and this is such a niche tool. Like, how many people are going to purchase this when they say affordable? This is going to rental houses or labs.
For anyone who
that's who it's for.
Competing against a Phantom, and Phantoms can cost, like, they start around $80,000. So the fact that you can get one of these for 20 when your other option is 4 times that's pretty compelling. I think it's mostly for like science and just like what can you see at these higher frame rates. And you mentioned 4K at 1400 frames per second.
That'd be fun.
I think that sounds pretty great for like slow motion stuff. Just to curious what happens. That's things that your eyes can't process at normal frames per second of whatever our eyes see.
I could see some YouTubers picking it up, for certain kinds of YouTube channels. I could see that where they might say a vision is like beyond our scope, or we have to borrow it from the manufacturer or rent it, like Jordan says. So I could see maybe some YouTubers buying it, to do their stuff. But I don't know. I mean, was the footage on the Vision that much better? I like all the stuff that I've seen from it. Again, it's not great. It's not what I would call cinematic.
What, like, are you saying the Vision researchers Phantom Flexes?
The Phantom?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Phantom.
Yeah. I mean, it does the job. The goal is to show you what's happening at that frame rate. It's not supposed to look like a cinematic masterpiece. It's just supposed to show you.
Yeah.
And I think that
works. Then bullets falling in the Hurt Locker, that looked cool. That's an early example of like 12 years ago, a version of the Phantom. I'm sure they've come a long way since then.
Yeah. Well, it's also remember just how good. Well, yeah. Think of how good the Red Raptor, the V Raptor now shoots like up to 600 frames per second at 2K, and will look incredible, right? Even that the resolution does not matter in comparison. The image out of the Red can be cut into any movie, right? So, and that's a $20,000 camera that can do a lot more than that slow motion. So this is so niche, needing to get over 600 frames per second.
Yeah.
If you need it, it's not,
All right, well.
But if you want to start the next Slow-Mo Guys channel, you can do it on a budget.
Sure,
now,
that's true.
I will find out. I doubt it. I don't think they need reviews, but sure, I will ask.
If it's anything like a Phantom, like they were very clear. I had a client who was looking for one, and they're like, you basically have to hire someone who's been working with Phantoms for a decade. These things are impossible to operate. It's a very complicated thing, and the workflow, and they're like, it's like 26 cables coming out of this thing. So this looks like it's a little more streamlined than that. So yeah, I'll review it. Sure.
And cheaper. And yeah. All right. Well, that's the news. Jordan,
we did it, guys.
Take us into our next topic.
Fast.
Yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah, because we've got Tyler on the show, it's been, for this time of year, a lot of like really exciting tech developments have kind of happened in the last little while. And what's cool is you have experience with a lot of them. So, and just to run off a few, we've had the M3 launch, the iPhone 15 making like real strides for filmmakers, a little less so for photography. Global Shutter's been announced. I don't know if you haven't gotten your hand on that. He's holding something that's M3. That sounds cool.
Yeah. So that's what I'll have the most to say about. No, I didn't get a chance to use the A9 III. So I've only watched a couple little videos. So I'll have the least to say about that. But the Mac universe, a lot has happened lately. And I mean, I'm still talking about the iPhone 15 Pro a lot because it's just been so significant. I'm actually using it right now for this video because now that it can shoot in log, you can get things that look like every other camera because you can throw a proper LUT on it. So that's been a huge impact. But I don't know, guide me towards like, what are you curious about at the moment?
So what I really wanted to narrow it down to is you are like a working professional, you're doing client work, things like that. What of all of these new developments is going to have the biggest impact on your day-to-day life, you think?
I mean, the biggest has already sort of happened, and that is the M chip update. So I hopefully everybody listening at least has an M1, and if you do, you're fine. If you're still on Intel, this is the year. M1s are cheap, M3s are amazing, or if you're using a PC like Chris, that's also acceptable. But it's okay for him.
You have like the same opinion that I do, Tyler, that if you already are in an Apple Silicon situation, you're probably good. I could make the argument that if you have an early M1, just like the baseline M1, the M3 is definitely still like, okay, there's a notable jump here.
Yep.
But anyone still using the older Intel-based Macs are going to be blown away how good the M3 is.
Oh yeah. I mean, it literally changes all of your workflows. Like you don't need to create proxies when editing videos, and you can work on bigger footage, and you can do live noise reduction. Like the amount of stuff, it just cascades through all of your workflows. Everything's different now. What's interesting with the M3, so coming up to most recent news, the computer I have in my hands here that I haven't released a review of yet.
Jaron, wave yours around too.
Yeah, is the M3 Max, which had by far the biggest update. So this is the most expensive M3 chip. But what it's this interesting shift of like the M3 and the M3 Pro only kind of had moderate bumps in performance, like that usual like 10 to 20% in most situations. Some it was more, but nothing crazy. It's like, yes, good, this is better. But if you have an M2, you definitely don't need to upgrade. The M3 Max is blowing away the M2 Max, and especially the M1 Max. It's getting double
better
performance
in most cases than the M1 Ultra.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and even M2 Ultra in some cases. Like, it's just there was this huge jump just on that one processor. So it's sort of hard to do this full review of like the M3 family was all released at once, but it's totally different stories with each one and what you're talking about, and you almost need to like break it down completely which one you are considering. But no, the positive side, M3 Max is like, this is the year to get into it. Like, if you need pro machines, even if you have an M1 Max, this is not a bad year to upgrade.
So yeah, I remember Jaron was so excited coming into the podcast about like 3 weeks ago. Like, guys, this thing smokes. And it is really exciting if you're doing like that heavy lifting and things like that. But I mean, to Jaron's point, right now I'm using an M2 Max, and we were just cutting multiple 8K timelines. Or like last week we did the GFX 102, where I'm putting up 100 megapixel image sequences for an autofocus. And I mean, back in the day, it would be like drop it in, sit and wait. Even in playback, it's like you're getting a slideshow, and this thing just doesn't break a sweat. So, if you're in that, it might not be a necessary upgrade, but if you're doing like, heavy CG lifting and stuff like that, then it's just cool that we're seeing this huge kind of unexpected improvement at the high end.
What were you going to say, Chris?
Well,
So I guess my question for Tyler, though, is first off, do you use any other computer systems other than Apple? Like, I know you're firmly entrenched in the Apple universe. Like, because where I'm going with that is, it seems like Apple, we're talking about it in terms of being creators, and you guys are talking about in terms of, as your industry, this is the tool that you use to make your living and to do your stuff, right? But, there's some talk now where I feel like Apple's trying to expand what their computers can do. They have classically been the professional's computer for video editing and for working and for that kind of stuff. But there was always other arenas they didn't touch, like gaming or, personal computer stuff maybe, or business kind of solutions. So does it make sense that Apple's maybe trying to make their system more versatile now? Do you see them branching out into other industries or trying to grab at other places?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to the point where there's a lot more situations where I think it's strange to choose anything other than Apple. I mean, especially in laptops. Like, obviously you're happy with yours, but when you look at the pricing of the base models, like the MacBook Air, the performance for the price is absolutely competitive with anything Windows is putting out there. It's not that Apple is it's not the Ferrari of computers, like it's the BMW. It's solid. It's sometimes more expensive, sometimes competitive. But like, they really do have something for everyone. So it mostly comes down to a software decision. If Windows is what you need, if it's what you prefer, then like that answers the question, right? But if you really are mostly looking at like performance and hardware, there are more and more situations every year where a Mac makes sense. And you're asking, I don't want to dodge the question of, do I use other platforms? Not very often. I had a Razer last year that was like pretty up to date, and I was like using it basically to see where is the Windows laptop market at right now and what's it like. And I could not choose that over a Mac at this point. The speakers are infinitely worse. The driver maze that you run through when you're trying to set it up, just trying to get things working properly and deleting all the bloatware, and the cursor response, like physical trackpads on all the Windows laptops I've tried, are much worse. There's a lot. I mean, I do feel like they were more directly competitive for a long time, but right now, especially in terms of laptops, Apple is really pulling ahead.
And you didn't even mention the fact that two things. One, Chris's laptop is loud as hell, doing nothing on standby. They're shouting at him. You can't hear it now because he's tuned his mic to it. But if you had to sit next to him for any length of time, you would suddenly wonder why you're so irritated. Like, you're just suddenly you're just angry, and you realize it's because this whine has been in the background crushing you. And also,
It's
white noise generator.
It should be calming you
it
down.
doesn't do that.
It's ASMR.
Also, their computers, his is plenty powerful when it's plugged in.
Yes, that's where I wanted to go.
Rather than crapping on the Aero, the beautiful Aero, I know you guys love to do that. But I mean, I guess the question is, what can, a few years ago, you'd be like, okay, Apple's great, but it can't do this. So what can't Apple computers do now, Tyler, if anything?
Big 3D stuff, you still just wouldn't choose it, or a lot of AI GPU based things. It's not the winner in terms of absolute power, in terms of either CPU or GPU. I think there's this perception based on the way that I say things that like, oh, now Apple has the best CPUs because of their M system, but it actually isn't at the top of the line. Intel is still faster when it's plugged in and has a lot of power offered to it, and same with NVIDIA. Cards are better GPUs. So
but look how big they are. If like that's you're physically more.
It's becoming more and more specialized. Like you need to need that extra room. You need to be doing like real 3D, like not just adding a few things in After Effects, but you're creating whole worlds, or you are. Or big AI stuff where you just need multiple GPUs and you're just chewing through a lot of machine learning and things like that. But even in terms of some of the GPU intensive things, the shared memory architecture of the M chips also means that on this M3 Max, I can have 128 gigabytes of both RAM and video memory that is accessible to the GPU, which you can't buy a GPU that has that much memory. So there's this is an Apple demo. They like to give at all their events is like they'll open up some video project that they're like, this can't run on any NVIDIA GPU. You can't open it all at once and see it all at once because it takes up more memory that is available on any existing GPU. So, but still, most 3D artists are going to use a PC.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to touch on the power consumption. Like the practical advantage for me is, when Chris and I are traveling and I cut a YouTube episode on our flight to New York. And Chris, I'm like, I need some photos from you. I hope you can export your raw files as JPEGs and put them on a jump drive before this thing shuts down. I mean, that's like the practical consideration to me.
Come on, it's not that bad. The computer unplugged can process images. Okay, the battery life's maybe not great, right? I get about an hour, 10 minutes max.
That is really low.
The real problem, so the real problem is like the brick takes too much power. So airline power plugs will not give out any wattage for them. Once you plug in, it's like, no, can't do it. Too much of a draw. So even though if there is an electric plug there, 110 volt, I can't utilize it with this computer. So I am running without the I'm in battery saver mode basically to process everything.
And it is a shame because an airplane is the one place where your fan noise wouldn't drive me crazy because it's slightly drowned out by the engines making you soar through the sky in a large metal object.
I mean, we're just at the point that, like, this is at the point that I can't defend PC laptops right now at all. Like I can't justify them for anything at all unless you need to game on the go.
Well, not even that anymore. Have you gamed on this? Have you gamed on them?
Yeah,
it works.
I mean, I wish there was more games, but that's what I was really hoping was going to happen at that event. They were going to announce like, oh, and now GTA 6
they need to literally hand money to developers to port it to Apple. That's the
but
point
you feel they're going that way, right?
I think they are.
I feel they're trying to target that.
Yeah, there's a demo they had at the event, Lies of P, that I've been playing since, and it's like, a double A or an A game, like that has all the graphics you'd expect and runs perfectly, and like there are a few more games.
Baldur's Gate is a AAA game that runs flawlessly.
That's true.
Other than a couple weird GPU artifacts in some cases.
Assassin's Creed Mirage is going to be coming to iPhone, which is crazy. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, not to bore people who hate talking about Apple for more than 5 minutes, which I'm sure is a lot of people.
Sorry.
Jordan had on here that you shoot Canon as your primary camera system, a man after my own heart.
Oh, here we go.
And he wanted to know what your thoughts are on what's going on with Canon, knowing the rest of the field. Sorry, I took words out of your mouth, Jordan. Yeah. I'm reading your own words that you put into our own thing here.
That's okay. They were really elegantly written, so anyone can just. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I mean, the big thing is Canon had a quiet year this year. There's been some lens launches, but they have been a little quiet. So where are you at with the Canon lineup right now, and what are you really looking forward to? Because I feel like next year is going to have to be a bigger year for them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they did so well out of the gate with the R5 and the C70 that they've been able to coast for a while because they were excellent, right? They were a bit ahead of their time, and I still feel like the C70 is the best in its class and its price range, and I love it. The reality of my year has been a lot more Lumix use. And I should also disclose that like they did this long-term loan program where Lumix kind of like has just let me keep using the S5 II for a while. So that's, part of it, but I'm glad they did because I never would have bought it. I wasn't paying attention to what Panasonic was doing at all. And they were like, here, just try this out for a while, see how it goes. And I'm shooting most of my videos on it, like all the time. The C70 is basically my A-roll camera, stays set up on the tripod, but everything that's on the go, anytime I'm traveling, a lot of the B-roll, I've been shifting towards Lumix because it's so much more flexible, so much more video and hybrid forward. The R5 is still going to be my choice when like the final stills really matter. Like I need all the resolution. I just need it to look perfect because the S5 II is only 25 megapixels or something. So,
yeah.
The Canon has the like raw quality, but the convenience of shooting and the speed of being able to acquire both photo and video together has been just kind of better in the Lumix world. So I've been using it a lot, and I don't know, Canon's going to have to do something next year to make me, want to upgrade the C70.
What would they need to do? What would you need Canon to do next year to be like, wow, and you can put the Lumix down?
I mean, it's easy to me. It's like they really need to be where Sony is. Because, Sony and Lumix are more direct, like Sony is ahead of what Panasonic is doing. Like the best cameras are Sony. Why Lumix is leading in its field is the price. Like it offers more in a much more affordable price range. But I think Sony is doing the best hybrid job right now. So if there's a Canon that can kind of be like an A7R 5 or,
So you want resolution, more resolution.
Well, no, I don't want more. I want it to be a good hybrid camera. Okay. Like the R5 is not good at video. That's my biggest frustration. Like it's total afterthought.
That's what I love about it.
Chris is saying the role of the internet in this conversation.
Yes. No, it's just like I put it down because it's like, well, it's bigger than the Lumix, but literally the video looks worse. It only shoots to C-Log 3. It's very sharp, but the dynamic range isn't really there.
Don't you love C-Log 3, Jordan?
Even just a little bit.
No,
it's super noisy.
He doesn't like C-Log 3.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
I don't like C-Log. Yeah, no. It's my
so that's where they have the furthest to go. R5 needs to just be competitive with the other hybrids right now. And then on the cinema side, I think they probably I do think the C70 is still really strong. I prefer it to like the FX6 or what Sony's doing on their cinema side. And it's still even kind of giving like Red a run for their money. Like that gap is starting to close between the high and mid end. And I kind of bet they'll have some kind of follow-up sequel to it. There's been rumors of a box camera, which would be huge if there's like a C70 style box cam. I think that'd eat into Red and Blackmagic even further. So I don't think they have anything to worry about on the cinema side. It's the still side that I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the new glass announcements?
I don't really care about I wouldn't.
So the 24 to 105/28, meh.
No, yeah. I mean, it's cool. Like it's a neat showpiece of like, here's what Canon can do. And I like having those absolute top of the line, best in the world lenses just to look at, but I just would never bring it with me. It's so big and the range isn't that. I mean, this is not crazy enough. Like I'm comfortable with 2.8 and something that's really, really excellent. And then, I'd rather this is all about like, how do you shoot, right? For me, having like a couple zoom lenses and one fast prime is just more flexible to how I operate. So, they're great that somebody wants to use it. I just like, it's never going to be something that'll be in my kit. And the prices.
I had a question about, on this sort of video topic. So I'm using the iPhone 15 Pro Max right now, and I am liking it. Absolutely. I'm contemplating using it for more video applications, Tyler. So I wanted to ask you, have you tried that whole thing of like putting it in a cage, attaching microphones, ND filter solutions, and what kind of app you're using to then control the video? Have you explored that yet?
Well, I am so glad you asked. So right now I'm running through the USB-C out into basically just like a normal, I can't lift it up, like USB splitter that has an HDMI out. So you're like watching the iPhone 15 Pro through the Blackmagic.
Wait, this is the iPhone
app.
right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been the iPhone. So it's in log with a LUT on it. So that's why it looks like pretty normal.
Yeah, you fooled me.
It's like a LUT I developed and resolved to try to match my other cameras, just so it kind of like feels like a normal camera. And that's what log can do now. It's crazy. And this is just the clean feed out. I mean, I didn't do anything special. And it blows me away too. I'm like still kind of excited about it. The big problem is now I can't change. Like I've been looking at the white balance and wanting to change it the whole time, but I can't reach behind the camera while I'm recording. So there's, it's not as perfect as a bigger camera sometimes, but you can do the things that you could do with the traditional camera now. So I haven't rigged them in a way that makes me happy carrying it around now. I think usually you would, if you're going to rig it up, you'd still use a traditional camera, except for like professional TikTokers. I think there's a huge market for people that, or Instagrammers, like people that, and I say professional, I mean, I know people are kind of laughing, but there's a lot of people whose job is to create vertical content that is seen by millions and millions of people, and it needs to look good and sound good.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm sort of like focusing my efforts, and I'll have some announcements about that soon about how I'm.
Are you recording internally onto your phone? For the most part, video?
I'm not. Was I supposed to record a backup?
No. This is perfect.
No, I mean just in general.
No, this is just a clean HDMI out. That's all it is with one LUT on top of it. And I could have switched this for like a more cinematic LUT as well. Like you can really, dial in the look.
Right.
But the difference between this and if I was doing like the regular camera out, maybe when someone else is talking, I'll switch to the other camera so you can see the difference. It's night and day. Like it does not look like the traditional
switch
iPhone
now.
camera.
Well, watch. I don't mind if it's funky. I'm just curious what this.
If you're listening, pull over and pull up YouTube now and and enjoy this visual.
But also somebody else talk for a minute while I troubleshoot.
Well. Okay, so that was entirely my fault. I need to apologize to everyone. I asked Tyler to do something, and that was bad. Everything died. Like
literally everything.
Everything. His headphone.
Even my headphone stopped working.
So power stopped working in his building. It was nuts.
So don't change your source on a Riverside podcast
mid recording,
or you bork it. So anyway, we're just gonna move to the final thing that we're gonna talk with Tyler about, and I'll let Jordan loop that in.
Yeah, I'm just curious. When we were at the camera store, I bumped into you the other day, and you were like, "I'm thinking it's time that I had a Leica," and I know you've been messing around with one, so I just want to know. Like we've talked about, like cutting edge tech and things like that, where Leica is almost as basic as things can be. How has that experience been for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, first, huge thank you to Chris and Matt, local photographer, who lent me his original Leica Q it's been about a month now. And I should have given it back to him yesterday, but I didn't. And I have actually been very surprised how much I liked it. I thought I would have more of because it's an older camera. Like it's not even the Q3. It's not the current one. This is out a while ago. And I'm like, it'll feel like a struggle. Like I'll end up having to use manual focus because the autofocus won't work well enough. And the sensor is old. I don't know, whatever. But it was great. It was actually great. The images came out really well. The autofocus was totally better than I expected. It worked fine. I wasn't missing shots. And this is the older one. It doesn't have any face tracking, doesn't have any of those kind of issues. And there was still something special to the images. Yeah. And I'm a big skeptic of like, I'm sure some other camera reviewers are listening. When people are like, this camera has something special to it. So often I'm like, that's not the camera. Like it's your choices, unless you're shooting to JPEG. Most raw images just come out basically like, a Lumix and a Canon and a Sony. Like they're not significantly different once you've really done anything to the raw file. It's more about whether you're using Lightroom or Capture One will make a bigger difference. But there's something that like sticks with the Leica, even the raw files, where it like kind of I think of it as like there's this gravity to the shadows where it wants the shadows to be deep, and there is just kind of always this rich contrast to it. There's just all these elements to what the image looked like that I was like, it does still feel special in ways that I didn't expect, even though, it's a Sony sensor. There's no magic inside any camera, but it looked different and it was an absolute pleasure to shoot with. So now I want to try a newer one, but I haven't yet.
There's none of them around. That's the issue, right? Jump on that waiting list and hope. But do you think you're going to do that? Are you going to go Q3 or 2 or?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about I'm going to go on a waiting list for the Q3 at least, and then decide for my birthday next year is basically when I'll pull the trigger or not. But at the same time, what makes it hard for me to pull the trigger on is that it still isn't a luxury, really. It's not going to be able to do anything that my Canon or Lumix can't do. I just want it to be with me more often. Like, I really enjoy packing it. It's like there is such a significant difference when a camera feels good to you. Mm-hmm. And for a long time now, Canon, Lumix, and Sony are just not sexy. Like, I don't get excited to like, oh, I can't wait to get this out. Except for when it's new, when the camera's new, I'm excited. But like after a while, it's like, I'm sort of over it. Fuji and Leica are the only two that I'm like, and Red as well. Like every time I pick it up, I'm like, I want this to be close to me, and I want it to be with me all day long. And that's a great feeling. That's like what kind of makes you shoot more. And I just think it's an underrated aspect of cameras. It's just like, does it feel nice in your hand? Do you want to have it around? So that's been huge.
Totally. Chris,
all right,
you've used them more than I have. What's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying about the color and the sort of look of the image. And it is strange because it does carry through the RAWs, and there's just something about it, and it's just on the edge of imperceptible, and it's beautiful. And it's, you could talk about the M series, how, okay, they give you a completely different shooting experience, which is totally valid. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we talk about them that way. And this is one of the reasons why I buy it. You could argue that the Q series, operates like a lot of mirrorless compact cameras. So it's not so much the shooting experience is different, but the files still have this quality to them, which I haven't seen replicated on other camera brands. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. And,
Chris, should I consider the M series at all? I mean, I'm really leaning towards the Q. I like having autofocus. Yeah. The thing I think about an M is like, well, now I'm going into a system, maybe
Sure.
This will last me longer in total. I don't know. What do you think?
I would buy it because of the shooting experience. Like, I've always...
The M or the Q?
The M. Because of the unique shooting experience is really why I'd still buy it. But it's like, for so many years, I wasn't against Leica, but I was sort of in the crowd of like, okay, yeah, but it's expensive, and yeah, but it's like slow to shoot, and yeah, but it's like an archaic way of doing things, and you're paying way more money for essentially the same technology that you get in a Sony or whatever. And the more that I've been using the Leicas, especially the M series, the more I'm like, oh man, this is starting to like,
you get it,
speak to me, and it's starting to pull on me, and I'm starting to really kind of like have a ton of fun when I'm using them, and enjoy not just the results, but the actual act a lot more. And then I'm like, as cheesy as it sounds, I'm like, well, that starts to get you into kind of priceless territory, like that's where you start to be like, I could see why you would spend thousands of dollars, even if it's not state of the art, the latest camera, even just getting an M8, like an old school M8.2 or something. Like I see the appeal, and it's not for everybody, but it has grown on me.
I will.
I still can't afford one.
Me neither, but I'm going to back Chris up here at the risk of sounding like a Leica shill. The M series changed a lot for me. I am so burned out on being a photographer from having to do it as a job for so long that it was really refreshing to be like, I want to take pictures.
Right.
That's very weird. I haven't felt this in a while, and I still only feel it when I'm holding an M series.
Yeah.
I don't personally like the Q. That's just me. I know I'd never really liked the Q
Jordan,
series.
it's okay. Forgive
Jordan
him.
is aghast that I would dare. But like M series, and I think it might actually specifically also be M series optics are what really get me. Like, I look at those pictures and my heart goes, oh.
They're not even that good. Not from a scientific level. It's
they're actually like arguably not good, but there's something about them. Yeah. The feeling of, oh man, it's hard to replicate, and I can't afford
Jordan's
a Leica
seen me
either.
happy 3 times in my life, and one of those times was using the M6 in Germany. So yeah, it's not even digital, right? Like it's just, anyways.
Yeah. I also get that feeling with film point and shoots, which I try to bring around with me a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And actually, I really, just to touch on another camera you guys just dropped a big review on, was the GFX 102 that I actually felt really good with that too. And there was a moment where I was like, do I need this? And the only reason I'm not is the size, especially with the lenses. The lenses are very big. Yeah. I really enjoyed shooting with it though. It felt nice, and it like slowed me down in a good way, but could still keep up. Fuji is in that same world of like, it feels good, but it doesn't quite hit the right balance that the Leica did. There's something special.
Well, not to force us on, but there's so much to cover. So I'm gonna move the cart forward. We're gonna move on to what have you been up to, and I'm gonna start with Tyler, because Tyler, this is your opportunity to promote yourself. What are you working on? What do you want people to know? How are you writing a book? Stuff like that. Like, give us what you're working on.
The moment before we started recording, I just dropped a new video about what's on my iPhone 15, so people can watch that YouTube video. And the big thing I want to work on for next year, if I'm going to promote anything, is like, I just want to be able to offer some more products, some things to sell, basically to be able to focus a little less on sponsorship revenue model on YouTube, and like offer products that I think are useful for people, especially making films on their iPhones. So I've got a series of LUTs right now that are pretty good, and I want to make them amazing next year. And also some hardware stuff that would also tie into that. So I've got a few things on the go that none of it's ready yet. I just want to tease everybody that keep it up, subscribe, nice. And next year
I would test out any LUTs that you want me to try.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to focus on shooting more video on this year.
I mean, that's the
I
thing.
like the LUT you sent me, even the very early version of the
right,
iPhone.
Yeah.
I've used that for some product shots.
That was the beginning of the one that's out now. And everybody is going to start shooting log now. Like filmmakers have been using log since we got 10-bit. And even before, when we were on 8-bit, we shouldn't have been using log.
Yeah, correct. I was about to say, even when we shouldn't have been, I was shooting in log.
But now it's going to be everyone. Like anybody that's even curious about filmmaking will at least be experimenting with it. And if you just try the default way that Apple presents to you, you'll get results that aren't that exciting. They're not that different from a regular iPhone. If you go through like the proper color managed workflow, like an iPhone can look like an Alexa in some situations. So I basically want to offer solutions on how everybody can achieve that.
You mentioned stuff that's different from the traditional sponsorship. One of my goals for Chris and Jordan next year, and I'll be definitely helping with this, is
do we have to lose
doing
weight?
The same. No, gain weight.
No, he wants us to get sponsorship from Gundam Bandai products.
That would be awesome, but also no. I think we should. We're going to look into merch as well. So that's on our horizon too,
for sure.
But probably not as cool as yours. Yours sounded actually useful. Ours is going to be silly.
Merch is useful too. You got to wear something when you're on a podcast.
So Jordan, I want Chris and I to go to last, because Chris's is about his feet, and mine is about my hobbies. What have you been up to?
I finally finished Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That's been my accomplishment this week.
Wow.
So I went back,
Jordan
and Jaron, we did a podcast back in June where you were like, I have finished this. And I picked that game up on launch day. And only now have I finally, with my wife watching reality TV at the same time, so I can just focus on getting through it. I have finished a video game for the first time in a very long time. The end is really fun. Maybe the final thing a little easy, but it was a delight.
Yeah. It wasn't hard. It was just like exciting.
It's fun.
And the midpoint where you have to do stuff is also like very heartfelt. So it's all good. It's all very good. It's great when your main character says no words and you still feel emotions.
Yeah, I said before, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game I've played in the last 10 years, and I like this one more. So I guess this by default becomes... Also, I'm not playing many video games, but yeah, real pleasure. I'm just piggybacking on the opinion that's already out there very late.
Nice. Okay, Chris, I'm going to have you go last, and because mine's very easy. I got multiple comments in the last podcast that people wanted to see my Gunpla. Right. I will show you all one Gunpla.
If you're on YouTube, this is going to be compelling.
Yeah. I will describe it for those listening only. This is the ZGMF X108 Freedom, piloted by Kira Yamato.
It's like a porcupine.
Gundam Seed, which is the best Gundam. I don't care what anyone... I'm going to get some people who are going to snap back at me that I would say
as long as teenagers are saving the world, I'm happy. I want more teenagers to save the world.
He is a traumatized teenager.
Perfect.
Bearing the burdens of his parents' mistakes. That is Gundam. Anyway, this is my favorite Gundam.
I have no clue what's going on, and I love it.
So good.
Anyway. I've got a Buster Gundam around here somewhere. It's in pieces right now. I don't know.
Buster. Like it.
Yeah, and I get heavy arms around here somewhere too.
All right, Chris, let's talk about your feet.
I don't want to talk about my feet. So I didn't choose to, just so you know, I didn't choose to talk about my feet. Jaron's like, you're talking about your feet
You
today.
pulled out the ski boots and asked for help.
You
our
asked,
amazing listeners and viewers came through like
outpouring.
I've never seen before.
The percentage of comments about your feet and attempting to solve your your feet problems. I'm trying to use the dog. Whatever.
Podiatric needs?
Yes. Yeah. They want you to fix your feet. And there is a lot in there that you should listen to, apparently.
So what this has taught me is I'm going to take pictures of my feet and I'm going to sell them online because
there's a website for that.
I'm going to make so much money. We could do foot photo merch for the channel. That's what I'm going to do.
I don't want to wear your foot on.
I appreciate all the comments. And it's tough, right? Because the pain for me is actually in my arches, and there's lots of advice. Be like, oh, maybe it's your heel and stuff. I think maybe the general consensus is my feet don't like to be compressed. A lot of people are saying go looser. I could try these things, but like nothing's worked for decades. I don't know. We'll see. But I appreciate
Tyler, you ski. Tell Chris, solve his problem right now.
Snowboard instead.
Yeah, that was actually multiple comments did say that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at it. But anyways, what I did last week,
it puts the pressure in different places. Like it moves it up to your ankles a little more and away from your feet.
Go on, Chris.
Oh, so I got my tea set here. Not that I'm using this particular tea set, but Jordan will attest to this. I used to drink like a crap ton of Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, whatever.
Oh, you were one of those.
In the lunch break room, he at a certain point, he was just like, well, it's wasteful for me to be getting small compact containers. And I'd walk down and he's just chugging a 2-liter of Coke. And it looked like he had a problem, even if he claims he was rationing it.
My main caffeine stream. So I've actually cut out a lot of that. I only have it at restaurants now, and I don't do it daily anymore. So I'm drinking lots of green tea. And the memes are right. I mean, I've cut out Diet Coke, and my joy has dropped 30%. So that's totally.
So we don't recommend this.
But and I don't feel any better. I don't feel any healthier. That's all garbage. It hasn't revolutionized my life. It hasn't, given me tons of energy. But I'm drinking way less caffeine than I normally do, and. We'll see,
and you're miserable, so I don't know if we can really plug.
Is this a life hack?
Doesn't sound like it.
Use a life hack, yes, to drop your joy.
We have the largest backlog of tech support and comments that we have encountered this year.
And we're not going to get through it today.
And no, we're not, but we're going to try. So we're going to start with tech support. Hopefully all three of you can lend your mind powers to answer some questions. The first one is from Casper Steinsland, who emailed us and asked, I'm in a situation where I need some expert opinion / information regarding the differences between JPEG HDR images and conventional RAW. The question is, what are the differences between JPEG HDR and RAW in technical terms? When working professionally, that makes a living on high-end hotels, restaurants, and venues, which option should you go for? Is JPEG HDR a substitute for shooting bracketing RAW or stitching them together in post? Or is it meant for something else entirely? They use a Canon R5.
Yeah. This was a little bit tricky, because when people say JPEG HDR, does that mean that they're taking multiple JPEGs at various exposures?
Maybe, but also shooting an HDR photo.
I'm guessing this is in-camera HDR processing, where you meaning that it is just doing the tone mapping that you would otherwise do in software. And I would absolutely recommend doing the software. Do it in post. You're going to get much better results shooting raw HDR and processing it in Lightroom or whatever it is that you use. It's going to look better. You'll have way more flexibility. I'd never do it in camera.
Even a tone map JPEG in camera versus a single RAW, like the RAW is still going to be a better way to go.
Yeah, no, actually. So there's so often I'll shoot a bracket of RAWs. And I'm like, okay, and then I can save what's outside the window. Then I bring in the RAW and I'm like, oh, it's there. Like I just needed to move the highlight slider.
But, as an addendum to that, because they are shooting hotels, architectural kind of stuff, tripod work, real estate. Yeah, it totally makes sense to do multiple photos. Like that's like old school HDR. I would do those in RAW, not JPEG necessarily. You do multiple RAWs, stitch them together afterwards. That is going to be superior to editing one RAW file. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense for real estate. But in camera, yeah, I would stick with just one RAW file.
All right. Good job. Quick answer. Like it. Very definitive too. No arguments. So this is interesting. We've gotten multiple Logans and also a Logan repeated in our SpeakPipe backlog. This is one of the Logans, and they have a question for Chris specifically. Here we go.
Hey guys, so a while back, Chris did a video with Gordon Lang where they talked about old cameras that had really unique or really weird body designs. And one of the things they mentioned in that video is how in the last several years, the way that camera bodies are designed has remained pretty stagnant. It's kind of like everyone's settled on one design and stuck with it. Other than small differences in ergonomics and control layouts, pretty much all cameras these days look the same from a design standpoint. So if you guys could make any big changes to how camera bodies are designed, what would those changes be? I just feel like with all the innovations we're seeing in camera technology lately, it would be interesting to see a company really thinking outside the box and taking a totally new approach to how they design their bodies. Or do you think body designs have stayed the same for so long because it just works and it doesn't need to be changed? All right. Thank you for listening. Huge fan of the show.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I feel like the classic traditional camera design, we got to remember largely it had to house a film cartridge in a way that could then hold it perpendicular to the path of light. So, there's a design limitation there. And then we talked with Gordon about when digital cameras came onto the market and that was no longer the case and you could radically change the designs. The 90s and early 2000s was just this like Frankenstein experiment of camera designs. Everybody throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. And it's interesting that that's all largely gone away, right? We've all returned back to just a regular camera design because it works.
Little DSLRs.
Yeah, the classic DSLR, the mirrorless, basically copying that design because I think it works. And I think it is a case of just it's stagnant, but it's because it's the best way to do it. And, we talked a bit about like Sigma tried to experiment. Have you tried those, Tyler? The Sigma Quattros and where they went weird with the handle design?
No, I like that they tried, but I didn't try them.
Oh, they were terrible to hold. Honestly, it was a bad idea.
One of my favorite quotes you ever had on our show is back in the camera store days. You described the Quattro as holding a sea urchin tightly, which I think is perfect.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Without a tasty center. It was rough. Yeah.
It's a good take.
So I don't know. Why. Like, you always wonder. I mean, in my brain, I'm always like, oh, could you make like cool thumbhole stock designs? Or, like with video cameras, we've got rotating grips where your hand goes all around it and stuff. But it takes up too much space, which isn't a deal on a video camera. But when you're trying to put it in a camera bag, it's just not practical. What do you think?
I have strong opinions about camera design. Mine is mostly that I think everything went wrong around the 90s. Everything started looking worse. And that's what cameras still look like now, is like boring and like shoes or like SUVs. And I much prefer like basically 70s and earlier, that the design of cameras was similar for like 50 or 60 years. It was more stable for a longer period. It got weird in the 90s, and we're still kind of living in that until, Fuji started this like retro thing that I'm like, to me, that's not so much retro. It's like, that was the more proven design. And I prefer things like taking off the putting like the way that the EVF is like on top with a bump. I would love to see that go away and generally flatten cameras for packability, not for looks, but because once it goes into your bag, I want it to be the same. If it's symmetrical, it just fits more places. Having a bump anywhere means you're like wasting, it's like dead space on either side of that bump, which is one thing I really liked about like using the Leica as well. So I think there's still room. There's room for innovation that to me is things we already figured out 30 years ago.
Yeah. I miss the classiness because there was a period there in the mid 2000s where camera companies were kind of experimenting with like nice walnut handles and beautiful titanium finishes and
with the Stella and Luna.
Like the Stellar and one of those was garbage. Whatever had the garnet button.
They both were. They were both terrible.
But I mean, there were
like
compact. What was the Sony R1?
That was the Stellar.
The Stellar?
Yeah, with the baby, the RX100 with the
RX100,
right?
that one was gorgeous.
The Stellar was great.
I
mean, the Luna was
cool,
a monstrosity.
Yeah, the Lunar was terrible. But, it's like, I miss the classy designs. I miss the, when companies would have varying looks to their cameras and try a lot of different stuff. People, like Tyler, like you say, it's kind of become stagnant. And it either seems to be now modern or retro. That's like, those are like the two dichotomies that we play with nowadays. And
I've made this point on the podcast before, but I think it should be on our merch, Jaron, is for some reason, camera companies don't think that photographers care about aesthetics, even though we're in the visual arts, and that's silly and dumb. And Leica and Fuji have proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Nikon. Nikon, I personally think the ZFC is still gorgeous because it pulls at my heartstrings, right? And I think there's a market there.
That, along with the fact that camera warranties are probably among the worst of the most expensive stuff you can buy. Your warranty is really bad. Those are another thing I wanted to talk about for a while, but we'll do that on another episode. We'll instead move on to an email from David Ivanyuk, who asks, "Hello, this is David. I've been trying to figure out what's the real difference between 420 and 422. There are videos I have a shallow understanding of it, but does it actually make a difference? Thank you." And I think it's really good that we have Tyler here. We got two major video boys, and Chris, who is also quite a video man, and then me, who can't really express his thoughts well. So Tyler, Jordan, Chris, go.
You want to go first, Tyler?
I wonder if we'll all end up with similar takes or not. I'm so curious. I think in the practical world, for most people, most of the time, 420 will look exactly the same. You won't perceive a difference almost ever. I've watched all those same videos about like, what is the difference? And, my understanding of it is like, well, if you're going to be doing VFX, if you're going to be doing compositing, you need to remove the background, isolate colors, then 422 will have some additional, information that you could theoretically reach into. And in practice, it doesn't, you don't see it very often, even when I'm like pushing for it. So it's one of those, like, I always know the spec difference is there. I'll use 422 just because I'm supposed to. And it's like, it's just hard to perceive it, except sort of in specialty cases. But it doesn't really add a lot to file size typically from the codecs that I use. So I just go with the higher one.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, which is like we were working with log files back when we shouldn't. And the big thing I want to touch on is there's a colossal difference between an 8-bit 420 and a 10-bit.
Yeah, that's what mattered. That was the world changing.
Yeah. So essentially, to explain it, it's just how much color information is going along with your luminance information. Like if you're reading a row out to figure out the exposure, which is primarily what you want, how many little bits of color information are in between? It's less with 420. And like Tyler said, if you're just looking at the two side by side, you're not going to see much of a difference. It's when you're really pushing things. In 8-bit, the image would fall apart almost immediately if it was a 420 image. 10-bit, you've got a lot more color information, so it's less prone to that. There are some 420 cameras that have really nice picture quality, like the open gate recording on the Lumixes is 420, and I don't find a huge difference when I'm grading that from 422. But if you want the absolute most, you've got huge contrast, or like Tyler said, if you're keying, always 422 100% is what I'm looking at. But if you're going to just shoot like a regular profile and put it in your video, 420 is fantastic. That's all you need.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would add to that is because I'm a cheapskate and I use DaVinci Resolve free, I can't edit 10-bit video, right? So I'm shooting primarily 8-bit video for that 420 color spaces. And I guess the thing I would say about, and quality's fine, but I would say, although proper exposure technique is always important, I do find 8-bit 420 video to be quite unforgiving. Like if you screw up your exposure and you blow your highlights, like they're gonzo, right? And with log, it's the same thing, but you have the ability to push those highlights up high in your exposure, not worry about the shadows. With 420 8-bit, I find that I'm constantly having to keep my exposures darker than I might think they should be. And then boosting up those shadows afterwards, I do get noise. From a technical standpoint, I got to really be careful of my highlights, and I'm not going to get the same dynamic range. And that's fine for my output, but I would only say that's something to watch for.
If you shoot 10-bit and bake in a LUT, you can get the same quality in your final 8-bit file.
100%. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Next one is a speak pipe from Dylan Jugrup. Let's listen in.
Hi guys, I'm just planning my first film and I'm having to do my schedule and planning all the days of filming, something I've never done before. I've just started a new course and going on your expertise, I'm just wondering how many scenes, I'm just looking at the indoor scenes of one house at the moment, and I'm just wondering how many scenes I could possibly get filmed in one day, approximately.
I'll let you go on this, Jordan, but that depends on how much crew you have.
The variables here are nuts. I mean, Panic Room from David Fincher shot for like half a year, and that takes place in one room, largely in a house. I mean, it's how big is your crew? How complicated are your shots? You can move through dialogue scenes quite quickly, if you're doing shot reverse and a little bit of coverage there. If your blocking is dynamic, you can need more. It really depends on your directing style, to be totally honest. The old rule is on like an independent film where you have to move quickly and you have less crew, 2 pages of the script a day, but it depends what's contained in those. And it's really hard to give you a firm answer. I would recommend talking to an experienced producer. If you're going to be like putting people's time and your money on the line to make a film, talk to a producer, have them read the script and let them give you an estimate of how long this whole script is going to do, because different pages are going to take different amounts of time.
I haven't shot a narrative film before, but just based on my commercial work, I'd also suggest taking a day where it's just you and a couple friends, shoot it all on your phone and just get a sense, and especially for blocking, and you can do rough edit and previs, and like there's a lot of reasons that it's useful, but it'll give you a sense of scale of like where are the challenges, where are the pitfalls that we haven't thought about yet, and don't set up any lights, just like put the camera roughly where it's going to be and figure everything out ahead of time, and you might discover some unforeseen problems.
Yeah. What's cool is probably one of the greatest directors ever, Spielberg. That's how he directed West Side Story. Probably the best directed camera movement in the last 5 years is he just did rehearsals and walked around with an iPhone. And apparently what he shot in the iPhone and edited with iMovie is very similar to the final film, which is nuts. Oh, dude, it's unbelievable.
Can you see
Let's talk about West Side Story.
Don't get him started.
No. Where can you see that? Can you see the iPhone video somewhere?
Oh, there was a smidgen in the BTS. I don't think it's actually available. Oh, I would love to see that.
Depending on, the only other thing I'd add is like, if you have competent people to help you out that can do a role of like an assistant director who can wrangle all of your staff, who can, relay your instructions to people so that they're working and they're getting managed while you're planning out your next stuff. If you have somebody who's going to be doing the lighting for you as opposed to you having to do all that yourself, I mean, really it's going to come down to how much are you going to micromanage yourself. Yeah. That's going to slow things down if you're doing it by yourself. And if you have people that can help you out to manage all your crew properly, that can really speed things up.
All right. There's still more. I have moved them to next week, where we have an episode where it's just us answering all these questions. Okay. Instead, we're moving on to Never Read the Comments, where we make sure to always read the comments. And one on PetaPixel by Aeth, A-E-T-H, regarding your last video. I'm surprised that the 4K pixel binning mode reduces low light performance. Shouldn't you get better performance by averaging noise across multiple pixels?
So it's better than line skipping, for sure, where you're just throwing information away. However, if you read out every pixel, you're creating a larger than necessary image. This is what we call oversampled or supersampled video. You will have less visible noise in that compared to when you're binning, which is basically like having not really larger pixels, but you're splitting the difference. It's like you're getting more than you need to output 4K, but less than you would if you're reading out the entire sensor. And it does throw away a lot of your big sensor advantages when you're doing that. So yes, detail will drop and low light performance accordingly will. It's really nice if you go on the old DP Review Studio scene, they have video samples and you can compare your subsampled from your oversampled video clips from the same camera. Like the R5 is a great example, Tyler, where you could do oversampled and it would overheat and annoy you with the early firmware. Mm-hmm. Or you could go subsampled, less rolling shutter, but you would get a hit in detail and noise performance. So you can see it practically there. Just specifically looking at the image out of the GFX 100, shooting at base ISO with F-Log, there was still a fair amount of noise in the shadows, where if you look at it in stills mode, those are the cleanest shadows of any sensor that you can get right now.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is actually two questions that are sort of the same. El Greco de Geek asks, I'm curious, at what point did you guys stop using the Z9 to record video and why? In addition to that, Chris Moore 904 asks, thank you for always doing great videos. Why do you use the G9 II versus the S5 II?
Ooh, I guess these are both for me.
Those are for you, yeah.
I've only recorded sparingly on the Z9. It's actually the Z8, which I really enjoyed shooting videos with. That's a great camera. We don't have really a full lens lineup for that. We just have a 24-120. and at some point Nikon's going to ask for that back. God help us. I do love using that camera, but the biggest thing for me is glass. And that's why I keep going back to Micro Four Thirds. They have the 10 to 25, 25 to 50. I think you have one of those now, don't you, Tyler?
Yeah, I haven't reviewed the G9 II yet. I just want to throw in that it's like the best overhead camera in the world right now. Like if you need something to look down on your table, more is in focus, lots of depth of field, good autofocus, great lens selection. It's very lightweight, so it fits up there. Everything about it. I'm like, for YouTubers, anybody that needs to do top downs, G9 II.
Yeah. And I really love it. The big reason I choose it over the S5 II, which the 2X is what I've been using, which is great, but and has some excellent video lenses. Their 2470 has a focus clutch, which I really like, and really well breathing corrected. There's just nothing comparable to those 1.7 zooms where you're getting a stepless iris, a mechanical focus clutch, so manual focus is really easy. And especially now that we've got the new phase detect autofocus, I'm juggling constantly between like flip the switch on. If I'm doing face detect, it's actually quite reliable with a single person. And then if I want to film the camera, just flip it over to manual focus and pull focus that way. It's been great for how I'm working. So that's why those have been my top picks right now. The other big reason that I don't love using the S5 IIX is I hate a crop when I switch to slow-mo, especially with the S5 IIX. I love those little 1.8 primes Panasonic makes, and recomposing when I want to just quickly grab a 4K 60 frame or something is super annoying, where on the G9 II, I can go up to 4K 120 with no crop and still oversampled video. It's awesome, just not to have that quality hit when I want to do slow motion.
I'll just second that. That's the biggest problem with the S5 II. And the main reason I'm really looking forward to Lumix to do whatever the sequel to the S1H will be. Because like having the big boy in the Lumix lineup, I mean, that's going to give Sony a run for their money.
Yeah.
This is also probably going to be a Jordan question, but L4Get42, or that might be an I, asks, "Hi, Chris and Jordan. Fun as always. This is related to your Sony review. I know it's a Sony review, but I spent the whole time watching and rewatching for the autofocus and low light performance of the G9 II. It seemed like there was one time when the camera kept getting distracted by Chris's hand when it came to the frame, but the night shot was rock solid. Were there different autofocus modes or manual focus at night?"
That's exactly what it is. If it's low light, I manually focus with those cameras. I do find the autofocus takes a little bit of a hit in those situations. And yeah, I'd say in general, the face detect autofocus, like I said, especially with the single source, is very good on the Lumix cameras. But if you get animated and start doing some of this, I mean, I don't know if it's going to lose me right now. I'm on an S5 II. But yes, it does get confused, and you totally could see that in that episode. Usually I would cover that up with coverage, but I cut that episode in 24 hours, and it is an 18-minute video, so it is rough around the edges. I think if you see any slightly lower production value than usual, that's because time equals production value.
If any Lumix designers watch this show, can I just beg them to add face-only autofocus, the same as Canon does, where it's like, I don't care about anything except for faces, because that's kind of like all I use a lot of the time. Every camera needs that.
Cool. All right. This one is more like just a pat on the back here from Screen Fiends.
I'll take it.
I've never owned, used, or even touched a Pentax camera, but I am over the moon that you guys cover brands outside of the big three. There is an integrity to that goes beyond chasing numbers and trends that most other reviewers could only dream of. Huge, huge respect.
You're damn right. Thank you.
I want to point out in the next few weeks, we have two very niche camera brands that you typically don't see getting reviewed, and we're going to be reviewing them, and you're going to be loving them. So stay tuned.
We'll see.
This next one is from Mod Film Cairn. It's either I tried my best there. They told me, "I really enjoy how non-camera biased Chris and Jordan are and always have been. Jaron, you could really learn a lot from these guys. You come across as very anti-Sony. You don't want to piss off 25% of your listeners." It's funny because I also get that I'm anti-Nikon, anti-OM, anti-Panasonic, anti-Canon, despite the fact that I've always said I like Canon and also Panasonic. I've been told that I am anti-everyone. And I'm going to quote Joe Buck. Joe Buck, the announcer who was once at Fox and now ESPN, in his Twitter bio years ago, he said, "I love every team except yours." And that is the sign of someone who is trying their best to hold everyone to the same standard, regardless of how they actually feel. I don't hate any camera. I don't have any strong opinions that direction. My job is to just ask questions and make sure that we've covered things wholly. So if you think I hate them, I think I'm doing my job correctly.
I would also say that one of the hallmarks of being non-biased with an opinion is that you're willing to piss off 25% of listeners. So, yeah.
Yeah, for an example of that, look at the comments on our GFX 100 Mark II.
Okay, so last couple things here. Deep Sea Diver 8191. By the way, that does remind me, we got plenty of answers as to why there are lots of numbers at the ends of their names. YouTube is adding those. There are not 8,191 deep sea divers, Chris.
There probably are. Let's be fair. There's probably
historically, there certainly have been, Jaron.
There's a lot of deep sea divers.
Okay. What would it take to have Jordan as the main character in a feature-length movie? That is a legitimate question we received.
So my question for this is it Jordan Drake as I am now, or am I an actor in a feature-length film? Because I am not compelling. I don't know how we've managed to stretch me talking for over an hour every week into a thing people watch and listen to. So I wouldn't watch that movie specifically.
What would that
but if
movie
you
even
want
be
me
like?
to be the lead in a motion picture, sure.
Jordan Drake is played by Chris Niccolls.
I'll play Jordan.
Do the Chris Niccolls biopic, and I will play Chris Niccolls doing nothing but wear a wig. And oh man, I'm in on that. I will write that screenplay.
Oh man.
Hell, I'll take I'll Mel Gibson that thing. I will write, I will direct, I will star.
I could see doing a quirky, Stranger Than Fiction kind of movie, or a mumblecore film. I could see you in that.
All right. Well, to close us out here, I have 3 comments, and they are a perfect exemplification of why I try and do certain things. Synonymous and What Remains said, "You can run the episodes longer, and Jaron, for the love of God, stop worrying about the length of the podcast." And in contrast, Cam7P3 says, "Life is too short to listen to 3 buddies entertain each other while metering out limited amount of useful information." So I'm going to take the average of this and continue to hold our podcast to a certain length. Despite
life is not too short to make comments on podcasts.
So the reason being is you may like long podcasts, but not everyone does. And also, this is just the length we decided on. We don't have infinite time. And
Tyler, what's the perfect podcast length?
4 hours. I mean, I don't know. I aim for 1 hour on mine. It's just
we're way over today. I know we're going to be at the 120 mark, but just to appease Synonymous and What Remains, I will just let this go. I will not sound rushed or anything, but
don't worry about Cam7P3. He doesn't have time to write any more comments negative ways.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's
life's
fine.
too short.
Tyler, thanks for joining us today. Sorry for ruining your camera setup by asking you to push one button.
I'll fix it after we hang up.
Thanks again to OM System for sponsoring the PetaPixel podcast. We appreciate it. And we're going to take a Thanksgiving break here on PetaPixel. But that doesn't change
Thanksgiving
anything.
was weeks ago.
Yeah, okay. American Thanksgiving. That doesn't change anything about our publication schedule, actually. We won't really notice a break until Christmas, that holiday season. But yeah, I've got my fireplace. This was the last week of the fireplace, I think, until Christmas. And then after that, we'll go back. But thanks for joining us, Tyler. Thanks
Tyler.
for being here. And,
guys, that was great.
I do want to say, check out Tyler's YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff, as he's mentioned earlier, but definitely check out the podcast. It is one of the only photo video related podcasts that I tune in every week, even if I don't care about the subject.
Even if
he doesn't even listen to our own podcast.
Yeah.
I will put a link to the to his YouTube channel and podcast below the like button, which you should absolutely be clicking. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye.